It's February 25th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with President Yoon's impeachment trial. The South Korean leader and the National Assembly will make their last statements at the final hearing at the Constitutional Court at 2 p.m. on Tuesday, before the Constitutional Court decides on whether to remove him from power. U.S. President Donald Trump expressed confidence that the war in Ukraine is nearing an endgame during his talks with French President Emmanuel Macron. According to Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin is ready to accept European peacekeeping troops deployed in Ukraine. The Bank of Korea cut the key lending rate by a quarter percentage point on Tuesday, lowering the base rate to 2.75% from the previous 3% in an effort to shore up the economy. President Yoon will deliver the closing statement at the final hearing of his impeachment trial today. The Constitutional Court will hold the 11th and last session to wrap up the top-level trial. And we have our Oh Soo-young standing by at the court. Hello there, Soo-young.
Hi there, Tammy.
So, Soo-young, I believe the court will be hearing the final argument today, including from President Yoon. Let's go through what the hearing will look like today.
Sure, Tammy. So President Yoon's 11th and final impeachment trial hearing will begin at 2 p.m., some 73 days after the National Assembly passed a vote to remove him from power, this coming after he declared martial law on December 3rd. Now, justices are going to review the evidence they haven't examined yet before giving both the National Assembly and President Yoon's legal teams 2 hours to present their closing arguments. Then Assembly Impeachment Panel Chair Chung Chung-nae and President Yoon will deliver their final statements with no time restrictions. Until now, the National Assembly has argued that Yoon's declaration of martial law was illegal and unconstitutional, talking about how his orders on December 3rd were unwarranted. It's accused them of trying to blockade the National Assembly and remove lawmakers from the building in an attempt to stop them from voting to lift martial law. Meanwhile, Yoon has reportedly prepared a 40-minute-long handwritten speech. He's expected to reiterate arguments previously presented by his legal team that martial law is an executive right of the president and was declared as a warning against the dominant opposition party's tyranny in parliament that he claims paralysed government functions, as well as concerns over election fraud. In 2017, during former President Park Geun-hye's impeachment trial, the National Assembly's team spoke for 1 hour and 14 minutes, while Park's defense stretched their arguments to 5 hours and 10 minutes with 15 different speakers.
Well, Soo-young, once the hearings conclude, the deliberation period begins. Walk us through those steps.
Right, well, Presiding Justice Chung Yong-sik will present his review in front of his colleagues, and all 8 of them will then vote either for or against impeachment. Then the ruling would be drafted based on the majority opinion. If the presiding judge holds a minority view, then another justice from the majority will be assigned to draft the decision. The court will then decide the date to announce the verdict, which is expected within 2 weeks after the last hearing, so that's likely to be around mid-March. If six or more of the 8 justices vote in favour of impeachments, then President Yoon will be removed from office, triggering a snap presidential election within 60 days. However, if at least 3 justices oppose impeachment, the motion will be dismissed and Yoon will immediately resume his duties.
And of course, protests for and against impeachment continue in the meantime. Soo-young, how are things looking this morning?
Right, well, given that today would be the last hearing for President Yoon's impeachment trial, large crowds are expected to gather around the Constitutional Court. So the area around the court it will be closed off for public order and safety. And there are also going to be barriers, of course, installed to stop people and also traffic from flowing in. And over the weekend, 40,000 people, they participated in protests in Central Seoul's Jongno-gu district, university campuses, and in different parts of the country as well. Seoul police aim to issue a Level 1 emergency on the day that the court announces its ruling on Yoon's impeachment. A Level 1 emergency is the highest form of security alert that mobilizes all police officers and requires approval from the National Police Agency. Seoul police also plan to strengthen security measures for Constitutional Court justices who are currently receiving protection, as well as an increase in patrols in their neighborhoods. Back to you, Tammy.
A day of tension lies ahead. Suyang, thank you for the report today. And it's President Yoon's last chance to prove the legitimacy of declaring martial law. How will he make the most of the very final hearing? Let us discuss more with legal expert Jung Hwang. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So how critical is the final hearing of Yoon's impeachment trial, especially for the court to consider and deliver its ruling?
In most cases, I'll say it's a very important time for both sides to present their best arguments forward in order to put a bow in their overall case. At this point, however, given kind of the shenanigans we have seen from President Yoon's legal team, I wonder if you're just going through the motion. There is a great speculation, at least part of the ruling party, whether President Yoon will strike a very conciliatory tone, maybe even apologize to the Korean people. He has not done that throughout the whole 10 hearings we have so far, so I'll be surprised if he actually strikes that tone, and I think it's actually a reflection of the hopes of the part of ruling party's lawmakers more than anything else, but we'll have to see today.
Right, it's hard to predict until he really speaks up for himself. Now, the Constitutional Court plans not to impose any time limit on President Yoon's final statement. Why is there no time limit? And also, how long do you think it'll take for him to deliver his final words?
Well, the Constitutional Court would like to show that it is even-handed as much as possible. As you know, from both the ruling party lawmakers as well as the right-wing rallies that have been taking place in Seoul in recent days, there have been a great deal of, accusations of, being lack of impartiality and, various accusatory conspiracy theories leveled against Constitutional Court and various justices of the Constitutional Court. So at least to maximize the appearance of fairness and impartiality, I think the Constitutional Court is giving as much leeway to the president's side as possible. At the same time, and also President Yoon likes to talk, so I think we can expect him to talk maybe up to an hour, perhaps. But at the same time, given all the kind of unbelievable legal arguments and factual assertions that President Yoon's legal team has made so far, I wonder what kind of compelling case he can make. I mean, the lawmakers of the ruling party has hoped that he might actually strike a conciliatory tone, but as I said, given his track record, I think that is very unlikely.
Well, like you mentioned, it's hard to predict what he will say at the final hearing, but maybe an apology to the South Korean people. Would you say there will be a message to the South Korean people?
I mean, if President Yoon really tries to want to put South Korea back together, give a more unifying message, saying that it is all my fault and sort of but what he has done so far in the 10 past hearings is anything but that. He's been very divisive. He's been putting out statements ever since he was in jail, sort of rallying his far-right supporters. And throughout the hearings, we've seen him just blaming all his subordinates, saying that it's not my fault, it's all my subordinates who are basically following the wrong directions and so forth. So given that track record, I wonder if he can really strike a conciliatory tone after all. If anything, he might actually be more divisive than ever.
Well, the impeachment trial is finally wrapping up, but still, Justice nominee Ma Eun-hyuk is yet to be appointed. Would you say we should assume the verdict will come from an 8-member panel of justices?
I believe so. I think Justice Ma issue is kind of moot at this point, and also, if you recall, President Park Geun-hye's impeachment case, that was also decided by eight justice, not 9 justice panel. So I think the current 8 justice panel is perfectly capable of rendering a judgment.
Well, before I let you go, let's say the court deliberates that Yoon should be removed from office for declaring martial law back in December. Now, do you think he'll accept the verdict eventually?
Well, that's, it also depends on what your definition of acceptance is. I mean, by Constitution, there is no way to appeal the Constitutional Court's decision, so it's not really his choice to accept or not. On the other hand, will he continue to rally and kind of, spread conspiracy theories among his supporters? We'll have to see it, but that has been his pattern until now.
Alrighty, thank you so much as always for sharing your insight with us. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much.
Marking 3 years since the start of the Ukraine war, U.S. President Donald Trump met with French President Emmanuel Macron at the Oval Office on Monday, where Trump raised hope of ending the war within the coming weeks. Our Lee Soo-jin has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump and French President Emmanuel Macron agreed on the deployment of European peacekeeping troops in Ukraine as part of efforts to end the 3-year conflict. The two heads of state met at the White House on Monday to discuss strategies for a ceasefire as European leaders seek to persuade the Trump administration to maintain its support for Ukraine and the transatlantic alliance. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is also scheduled to meet with Trump on Thursday to discuss the deployment of peacekeepers in Ukraine. But the meeting came after the U.S. earlier in the day voted against the United Nations resolution condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine. This shift in stance from the previous U.S. administration has raised concerns in Europe. At the joint press conference, Macron said Europe was prepared to provide security guarantees to Ukraine.
So we have prepared, particularly with our British partners. We are ready to provide security guarantees. It could go as far as the president said, sending troops who would observe that peace was properly respected, who would position themselves not on the front line, not to enter into the conflict, but to mark their presence as a guarantee.
Macron also stressed that peace must not mean Ukraine's surrender. When asked directly about whether Russian President Vladimir Putin was ready to accept European peacekeepers, Trump remained confident.
Yeah, he will accept that. He will accept. I've asked him that question. It's time to end this bloodletting and restore peace, and I think we're going to do it. We've had some great conversations, including with Russia.
He also said that he believed that the war in Ukraine could end within weeks, adding that Zelensky could visit him at the White House in the next 2 weeks to sign a mineral deal. At a summit of European leaders held in Kyiv to mark the 3rd anniversary of the war, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky echoed this, saying that he hopes that the war will be concluded this year, while also stressing the importance of having security guarantees to prevent future Russian aggression. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
And Russian President Vladimir Putin said that he is ready to work with the U.S. to mine key minerals. Putin on Monday local time said that Russia was ready to work with foreign partners, including the U.S., to develop the reserves of rare and critical minerals, including in regions of Ukraine currently under Russian control. This comes as the Trump administration urges Ukraine to sign an agreement that will give the U.S. access to Ukraine's mineral resources in exchange for security guarantees and economic aid. And Putin also had a call with Chinese President Xi Jinping, where he told Xi that Russia is working towards achieving a sustainable peace. In the meantime, the UN adopted a Ukraine-led resolution condemning Russia's invasion, with the U.S. voting against it. But the UN rejected a U.S.-led resolution as well that called for an end to the war without mentioning Russia's aggression. Lee Seung-jae reports.
Monday marked exactly 3 years since Russia's invasion of Ukraine led to the ongoing war. Marking the grim anniversary, Ukraine and the European Union drafted a resolution condemning Russia's full-scale invasion, with 93 UN member nations voting in favor and 18 voting against. One of the notable countries voting against a Kyiv-led resolution was the United States. The resolution reaffirms Ukraine's territorial integrity while explicitly naming Russia as the aggressor. It also calls for Moscow to immediately, completely, and unconditionally withdraw all of its military forces from the territory of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders. While voting against the Ukraine-led resolution, the U.S. proposed its own resolution on the same day, which did not name Russia as the aggressor. It also noted the tragic loss of life throughout the Russia-Ukraine conflict and called for a swift end to the conflict and a lasting peace between Ukraine and Russia. The UN General Assembly did not approve the resolution, while it passed the European-backed Ukrainian resolution. The contrasting proposals show the tensions that have emerged between Washington and Kyiv with the start of the Trump administration. The passing of the resolution was a win for Ukraine, but with 65 abstentions, the vote shows support for the country in its war against Russia is diminishing. Previous votes in the Assembly saw more than 140 nations show support for Kyiv. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea's central bank lowered its benchmark interest rate by 25 basis points as widely expected, bringing it down to 2.75%. It announced a decision on Tuesday following the second Monetary Policy Committee meeting of the year, resuming its rate-cutting cycle after two consecutive rate cuts in October and November last year, followed by a pause in January. Global trade uncertainties heightened by U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff hikes and weak domestic demand fueled expectations of the rate cut due to downward pressure on South Korea's economy. The Bank of Korea also slashed its economic growth projection for this year from 1.9% to 1.5%. The number of hybrid cars registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million units. According to the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport on Tuesday, as of December 2024, over 482,000 hybrid vehicles were registered, pushing the cumulative figure above 2 million. Hybrid cars first appeared in South Korea in 2008, with the number of units reaching 1 million back in 2022. The proportion of eco-friendly vehicles, including electric vehicles and hydrogen vehicles, also surpassed 10% for the first time in 2024. Up next, we share with you some promising advances in the use of surgical robots and interventional treatment of cardiovascular diseases. Our Cha Yoon-kyung tells us more.
Researchers have been using a surgical robot, nicknamed the catheter robot, to perform venous and arterial catheterization for the removal of blood clots. A guide wire is moved through blood vessels controlled by the robot and overseen by a certified surgeon who can take control using a joystick to locate and treat blockages in, for example, the carotid arteries. The success rate of treatment using the catheter robot has been 100% in clinical trials due to its precise control and accuracy, and it also reduces operation times by assisting the surgeon effectively. It also lowers a patient's exposure to radiation by cutting the time needed for real-time X-ray imaging. The robot is currently undergoing further clinical trials before commercialization after acquiring the new excellent technology certification from the Ministry of Health and Welfare for the first time in Korea's surgical robot industry.
We will start using catheter robots in 5 designated hospitals from July this year. We can lower the operation time by controlling the robot precisely, 1 millimeter at a time.
Surgical robots are being welcomed by patients as they raise the accuracy of surgery and lower the error range. Eyes are on whether catheter robots can be successfully commercialized. Cha Yoon-kyung, Arirang News.
Now, let's take a look at the stories from around the world with our Choi Ji-hee. Good morning, Ji-hee.
Good morning, Tommy.
So, Ji-hee, following Germany's federal election, conservative leader Friedrich Merz party and also its sister party are initiating coalition talks with the Social Democratic Party.
That's right. With Merz poised to become the next chancellor, his Christian Democratic Union Party and its sister party, the Christian Social Union, are pushing for coalition talks with center-left SPD. In the recent election held on Sunday, the CDU-CSU alliance secured the highest vote, emerging as the leading political force, while the far-right Alternative for Germany achieved a historic second place. Given the fragmented parliament, Merz has expressed intentions to form a grand coalition with SPD. While Germany saw its highest voter turnout in decades, the CDU-CSU alliance secured over 28% of the vote, and the AfD achieved a strong second-place finish with 20.8%. The SPD, led by outgoing Chancellor Olaf Scholz, recorded its worst post-war result at 16.4%. Merz aims to establish a functional government by April, and key negotiation topics include foreign and security policy, addressing immigration, and revitalizing Germany's struggling economy. In the United States, unions representing federal workers have sued Elon Musk, challenging his instruction that employees submit weekly work summaries or face dismissal. On Monday, a lawsuit was filed against Elon Musk and the Office of Personnel Management, contesting Musk's recent email demanding that all federal workers list their accomplishments from the previous week. The email also said non-compliance to the order would be considered resignation. President Donald Trump supported Musk's initiative, saying the email aimed to verify active employment, suggesting that non-responsive employees might not be fulfilling their duties. Moving over to Rome, the Vatican reported that Pope Francis, who is in critical condition with double pneumonia and chronic bronchitis, is showing slight improvement since being hospitalized on February 14th. According to the Vatican, while his condition remains critical, the 88-year-old pontiff has resumed some work activities, including reading, signing documents, and making phone calls. As part of his work, he contacted a parish in Gaza City, expressing his support amid ongoing conflict. Medical updates as of Monday indicate no further respiratory crises and stable kidney function. Renowned American singer Roberta Flack, celebrated for classics like Killing Me Softly with his song, passed away on Monday at the age of 88. Born in Black Mountain, North Carolina, she began her career as a classically trained pianist before transitioning to vocal performance. She earned multiple Grammy Awards recognized for her soulful performances, including consecutive Record of the Year honors in 1973 and 1974. Flack was diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis in 2022, eventually making it impossible for her to sing or speak. Nevertheless, her music continued to inspire and influence artists worldwide.
The bitter cold is finally behind us. It's going to start feeling more like early spring from today with a good amount of sunshine across the country. Here in Seoul, temperatures will be a couple of degrees higher than yesterday, hovering around the seasonal norms. Meanwhile, most parts of Korea will have very dry air levels along with strong winds. The Korea Forest Service has raised the nation's wildfire crisis alert level from the lowest attention to caution, so please be careful with anything that could start a fire. Now, afternoon highs will be 1 to 5 degrees higher than yesterday. Seoul and Chuncheon will top out at 7 degrees this afternoon. Daegu, Gyeongju at 11 degrees with good air quality nationwide. Looking ahead, very warm air moves in at the end of the week. Meanwhile, Jeju is forecast to see rain on Thursday into Saturday. In fact, frequent rain is in the forecast across southern provinces over the long weekend. So please take the weather into account if you have any outdoor plans.
That is all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.